Welcome to the Humans and Earth podcast. We bring you inspiration and practical resources for healing our planet and ourselves. It is time for soulful contributions that regenerate life on Earth.
I'm Helen Claire Harmon, a thought leader and teacher who believes we're ready to renew Earth and heal ourselves in the process. Welcome to today's episode. Welcome back to Humans and Earth. I am really happy to be talking today with Leonie Dawson. She's an internationally best-selling author of the Goal Getter workbooks and planners, which have been used by over 400,000 people worldwide. A multi-passionate entrepreneur, Leonie has generated over 10 million in revenue while only working 10 hours a week. She's been recognized for her business acumen by winning Aus Mumpreneur's People's Choice Business Coach, Global Brand, and Businesses Making a Difference awards. She's also a philanthropist, blogger, and podcast host, describes herself as a highly sensitive oddball, and is proudly neurodiverse. Leonie has spent the last 10 years living in some of the most beautiful places around Australia. She currently lives with her 2 daughters and husband on the Sunshine Coast. Find her at leoniedawson.com. Welcome, Leonie.
Oh, thanks, Helen. It's so funny when people read my bio. I think, who is this rad chick they speak of? Oh, it's me. High five, self.
I know. It's very funny to try to condense something about who you are and then relate to it at all times is odd. Well, as I messaged you before we started talking, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, what is your advice right now for people who really respect the way you show up in the world so authentically and unapologetically? I'm especially interested in this because as I look at the problems that we need to solve, and one of my big interests is humans and the planet, and of course that involves humans with one another, it looks to me like we're all going to have to do what you're already good at. We're all going to have to plug in more to that inner authenticity and sense of truth if we're going to kind of disconnect from systems and ways of being that haven't been working so well and build solutions. So I think you're an authenticity and inner truth expert, and I'd love to hear your advice for people right now.
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing is being yourself is about the most fun that you can have. So whether you could have a life where you second guess yourself and try to be something that you're not, or you could just be yourself and have a lot of fun and be with your own very best friend, which is yourself, for the rest of your life. Let's face it, the person that you are going to spend the most amount of time with for all eternity is you. So you might as well become your own dearly beloved and best friend. And here's the thing, where people go, oh gosh, that's such a foreign concept. I don't understand why it's such a foreign concept. Do you really think there's zebras out there that are thinking, oh, if I had this stripe that was just a little bit thinner or wider, then I would be worthy. Then I would be lovable. No, a zebra is just I'm a fucking zebra. I am going to eat this grass and I am going to stand in this sunlight and I am going to enjoy this one precious life that I've been given and this one glorious body to inhabit it with. And we are apes. We are animals. We are no different from this. So why on earth would they create, why would all of these animals be happy within themselves, but then humans are not happy within themselves? And I just think the reason humans aren't happy with themselves is just a construct of capitalism and white supremacy and all the other bullshit. And I just think, nah, no, thank you. No, I claim my birthright of adoring this body that I'm in with its quirks and enjoying this personality that I've been given.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's, as you said, probably the path to fun and enjoyment as opposed to constant self-punishment.
It isn't probably, it like is. It's so great, guys. Just do it, because you don't have to spend all your time like with your brain punishing itself. Like, honestly, my brain is just like a little festival ground. It's just a happy little place. It's just like and just thinks about what I want to create next. And even when I recognize that like I've made a mistake or that I'd like to do better on something, it doesn't have to be this whole self-chastising thing. My brain says, well, I completely understand why you did that. Like, that is totally human, totally understandable. I completely love you. And you know what? Let's just try something else different next time. And I go, yeah, let's do that.
Right. No, that reminds me of a recent interview I did with Anita Sanchez, who works with indigenous teachings from North America. And she said something similar. It's not that we're bad. It's just that we need to recognize something that didn't work so well, forgive ourselves, and move forward in creativity, which I think is also what you're saying. And it clearly works well for you because you're massively creative.
Exactly, right? Because I don't have to spend any time thinking, oh, is this good enough? Am I worthy enough to create or whatever? No, I can just bloody create and enjoy the process. And it's great. It's the best fun ever.
Yeah. So I'd like to connect this, it's not really a practice for you. It's a way of being authentic, loving yourself, being creative. You talk sometimes in your blog about places in Australia that you love. I know you've tried some gardening. I know you love to spend time outdoors. And that's made me curious to hear a little bit more about how you see your relationship to the natural world. It sounds like it's really important and something really present in your life.
Yeah. It's like, so I grew up on a cattle farm when I was a kid, and I would say it was one of the most seminal and important parts of my childhood was my relationship with the earth, and with my animal friends, and everything was just so beautiful. You know, there was just so much glory to witness. And I was reading a book last night about autistic women, and they talked about their earliest memories are often watching the sunlight on leaves. And I thought, oh my goodness, because I've had so many miraculous, like, you know, kind of godly moments having that experience when the gold is just dripping off the trees and the lights change, and it still carries on to this day. And so there's something kind of quite ecstatic about the natural world and the natural earth. And for me, it's meant that, you know, one of my biggest long-held dreams is, as an adult, I really wanted to live on acreage, just to be surrounded by nature and to have that peace infuse my life. So we're on nearly 2 acres at the moment, and it's such a beautiful blessing. And I love that we get these free pets when you get acreages. Like, here's the thing, guys, when you get acreages, you get free pets, because all the animals that, you know, just exist on there, they become your mates. So we have these magpies that visit us every single morning, and they have their names, and we've got all of our bird friends that live on the acreage, and it's a blessing. It's such a joy.
Tell us a little bit more about what your part of Australia looks like. I think a lot of our listeners are in North America and Europe, elsewhere in the world too, but tell us more about what it looks like where you are.
Oh, sure. So we on the Sunshine Coast. We live kind of like on the flat lands out, moving towards the ocean. So we're about maybe 2 or 3 kilometers from the ocean here, and it is surf ocean. So it goes down like deep enough that you can get a bit of surf happening, and Australia has this very distinctive sky with quite harsh light. It's so funny when I see photos and I don't even know who's taken the photo or where it is. I'll always know it if it's a photo in Australia. It doesn't matter where in Australia, just because the shadow is so much more intense. It seems like in North America and Europe, the light is a lot more diffused. And I don't know if it's from pollution or if it's a position of the earth or whatever, but Australia's light is, it gets you. And we are filled with gums, and this is koala territory as well. And we must do everything we can to try and secure koala's future going forward.
Yeah, I know they've been in the news here a lot because of the fires a couple of years ago. And then we had this amazing story in the news around Christmas time about the woman in Australia who went out to see her outdoor patio Christmas tree and found a koala. And my kids and I were so envious. Pretty marvelous to find that in your backyard.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I want you to know, like, they look really cute and they smell horrific. And they growl. Like, to hear a koala like in the wild is not a pleasant experience, but it's fine. Like they're so important. Like, I loved it. They look so adorable, and then they're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Right. I've heard they're kind of irritable and not the teddy bears that they appear to be to us.
No cuddles for us.
And so has some of your philanthropy involved environmental issues? I know you've focused a lot on human justice issues.
Yeah. So I went through a phase where I just donated to everything. Then I kind of simplified back to try and focus on one organization at a time. And now my primary organization that I support is Australian Wildlife Conservancy. So we donated $25,000 to them last year. And we'll try and do the same again this year. And that was after reading Wilding by Isabella Tree, which is hands down one of the most important books I've ever read in my life. And it is a woman who decides to let her farm in England return to wilderness and see what happens. And it is miraculous and exquisite. And I feel like it forms the blueprint for what needs to happen here on Earth, and how that kind of regeneration is critical for the climate crisis and for mass extinctions. So after reading that was when I looked around for partners, and Australian Wildlife Conservancy is the largest private landholder in Australia, and so they buy up land to return to wilderness. And it's exciting work.
It is so exciting. I too am really intrigued by the whole rewilding movement, broadly defined, because it's very beautiful and very important in kind of rural settings. It's also happening in cities and in suburban areas and in the backyards of people who only have a third of an acre. So I think it's just a hugely inspiring step forward. And I always try to point out to people, I mean, you know this already, I'm sure, the benefits for humans are so significant. It's not like an altruistic sacrificial thing that we do, but it's for everyone. It's for all life. It's obviously for all the plants and animals and amazing microbes and the cleanliness of the air and the soil, but it's also for our well-being and food and our immune systems and our lungs and all of that. So I get really excited about that.
It's everything, right? Like, there's zero loss.
Yeah. What would you say you're seeing in the conversation in Australia right now, whatever you see of it, about people and the natural world? It looks to me like globally there are some really wonderful shifts going on with people being aware at a deeper level and more engaged. What do you think about that?
It is, and I'm so excited for the younger generation because they teach us so much. They've taught us so much already about gender and sexuality and the environment and money, and I'm so grateful. Like it's just beautiful to see the teenagers and the kids in their 20s, adults in their 20s. With such a beautiful focus. Here in Australia, we have a party called the Greens Party, which is for people who, to vote for a political party who are more environmentally focused, and they also encapsulate social justice issues on their platform as well. And so they're starting to see greater and greater representation. They're still in the minority, but the more power they have, then they've kind of got more bargaining within the House of Representatives and the Senate here in Australia. So it would be beautiful to see that continue, but I think we just need to continue lobbying the government. And I'm grateful that Biden got in and re-entered the Paris Agreement for the climate crisis, because Australia, we are under a Conservative government currently. They have been dragging their feet on doing anything climate crisis-y. And so when Biden, as president-elect, announced that they would meet all of the Paris Agreement, suddenly Australia was like, oh no, we'll do the same as Biden is doing, and a little bit more. And I was like, oh, finally. So it's good to have that kind of peer pressure of just some kind of base normality. I know more needs to happen than just that, but there's some positive shifts that are happening.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about the ways in which that kind of peer pressure can be constructive, or maybe it's co-leadership or something like that. Whatever it is.
Setting a precedent, setting a bare minimum precedent.
Yeah. And hopefully, even if governments are, for the most part, not moving as fast as is needed and desirable, what non-governmental organizations and private citizens are doing will continue to really expand and ramp up as more and more people get excited about the win-win, about, the benefit to themselves as well as everyone else.
Absolutely. And one of the organizations that we also donate to here in Australia, we primarily focus on Australian Wildlife Conservancy, but in order to try and push for these new laws, I feel like Australian Wildlife Conservancy is great because they're like just buying up the land and nobody can stop that. But then to actually change their laws, there's an organisation called the Wilderness Society here in Australia, which will actually take the government to court, which is great. So I, am very happy to put money towards their legal funds.
Yeah, I suspect that in the next 20 years, we're going to see a lot of legal shifts because there are global movements now in defense of the planet and questioning carbon emissions and things like that. And I've talked to some people who specialize in that field who say it's just waiting to burgeon and really benefit everyone as we start to realize that our legal system needs to not just kind of protect human beings, but it actually needs to protect all of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing that I like to ask people is, what is your vision? What's your personal view of thriving people on a thriving planet? What would that look like to you?
Magic. I think having a little bit more of in some ways, it's funny, it's a kind of like a life that looks a lot like we experienced in quarantine. Well, it's a life that I felt like I experienced in quarantine, in that our life became very home-based again, like our ancestors experienced. And we spent a lot of time listening to the quiet, because all the planes stopped here in Australia, and they've still kind of stopped. And our children played like it was the 1950s. It was brilliant. And I started a garden and a compost pit, and I just adored that process of returning food to the earth, and this miraculous process of it just keeps on dissolving into soil. Like, this is incredible. And looking at kind of the fruit stash that we had, the fruit and vegetables, and working out ways that we could use them, it was blissful. It was gladness. And I felt really present during that time. And also because we in Australia, we actually couldn't really, we couldn't get groceries delivered for quite a long time. They didn't have the infrastructure to deal with that. And we also couldn't go to the grocery stores. We're allowed like once a week, and one person could go in at a time, but nobody wanted to be in there. And so we started buying local and organic from farmers who could deliver farm boxes, and our kind of postal system ground to a halt. And so it was really about making do with what you have, and enjoying what you had around you. And it was a sweet and a kind time. And it was a different time from what we're used to. But I think that kind of idea of living more in partnership with the seasons and your local community and the earth around you, even if it's just a tiny veggie pod patch in your, like on a balcony, I think that's miraculous.
Yeah, I hear you. I notice, I know the pandemic is more under control in Australia, and you're able to say this in the past tense. It's still very much an issue here in the States, and people are still engaging in a lot of what you just described. There was a beautiful story in the news here in the last few weeks about a farm in one of our eastern states, Massachusetts, that was very successful before coronavirus, selling to restaurants. And once the shutdown happened in the spring of 2020, they were facing possible failure and closure because they had built this farm for decades and their primary customers were restaurants. And what ended up happening, just as you said, as there were some grocery store shortages and/or people didn't want to go to the grocery store, as the community heard that this farm was in trouble, people flocked to their farm stand. And then the farm began essentially setting up an impromptu farmers market of their own, where other local suppliers of, eggs and things were selling at their farm stand. And not only did they feed the community, but the farm was able to survive through 2020 and is on a pathway to continue. So I thought that was a really inspiring story about people locally noticing something so essential like a farm that could meet their needs, and they could meet the farm's needs.
Yeah, like that kind of hyper focus is a miracle.
Yeah. So I know we don't have too much time left. Is there anything else you want to tell us while we're talking today about anything at all? What you're bringing forward in your work that you'd like people to know about, or any other thoughts you want to share with the Humans and Nature audience about humans and nature?
Sure. I think, and if you're listening to this, you'd know this already, but it's not about restricting ourselves to less, but it's embracing what more depth, more value, more connection to the land around us and to the food that that sources us and to the things that we buy. I know that sometimes like hippies and environmentally conscious people think, well, I don't really want to make a huge amount of money because I don't need to. For us, what we've discovered in our process of earning more than we need is that, and we can do really groovy stuff with that money, and redirect it to the places that need it and empower those organizations and those causes. And it also means that it's easier to buy organic food and to place priorities on, put our money where our values are, and to be able to buy, acreage land as well it's such a blessing. But most of all, I wanted to say that your relationship with yourself is the one that will sustain you more than the relationship you have with Amazon Prime. You know what I mean? Is that like, so often we as humans, when we feel lacking, we kind of turn out. And in our society that, it's so easy for us to buy to try and fill this need and make ourselves feel better in that way. But by having that beautiful relationship with yourself, and with your own creativity and what you want to birth into the world, you have much less time to even consider that. And that's a real blessing. As for what projects I'm working on, I never know what I'm going to work on until I just have the idea and then I just run with it. So if you'd like to know more about me, you can go to my website, leoniedawson.com. I have a page called Free Shit, which is all of the free shit I've made over the years, and you're most welcome to get those and use them as you wish. And jump on my mailing list because I love to send love letters every week and give more free shit to people and develop a real connection and a friendship with people. I've been doing this for 17 years now, and that beautiful relationship I have with the people who connect with my work is one of the greatest joys of my life, and their friendship, that they're friends and their family, and it's very dear to me.
Thank you, Leonie. I really appreciate getting to talk to you, and I certainly uphold your views on relationship to self and others. Thanks so much.
Thank you for doing this really important work and having these important conversations. It's so needed.
Thank you for listening to Humans and Earth. Please share this episode to broaden engagement in the regeneration our world needs. You'll find social media links in the show notes. To explore our other offerings, visit www.humansandearth.com.